Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Hey, good morning. A little technical difficulty this morning.
Yeah, running a little bit late.
Yeah, but we're here.
Yeah, and yeah, we're upright and on the show on a Wednesday.
Yeah. So, all of you know that we were in Vegas last week, and doing the whole "It's the other city that never sleeps," and a place where germs from all around the world collide.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so Jim came home with a cold, and he has been sick. I think.
You think it's a cold?
I think you're dying. Are you dying?
Well, all I can say
slowly
is,
every day.
God bless my, Uncle Robin, my ex-in-law, who's since passed, but Uncle Robin used to say, I'm sicker than most people in the hospital.
Oh,
And it's like I told
yeah.
Michelle when I first started not feeling well, I said, I feel really sick. I just feel like I don't know that I'm going to die, but I'm going to spend the next couple of days really complaining about how I feel.
Well, and I have to say, it's like he's not been feeling well. And so last night I was, so you're going to sleep, because we have a guest room downstairs, and he slept downstairs Monday night. After the show, he kind of just, in a way, just like, not crashed, but I mean, because you worked most of the day, but you just after the morning show on Monday.
Oh, yeah.
But this morning I woke up, and it's like he slept in the same bed, and I was like, I'm stripping the sheets, because I think
I'm still,
he was having
2
a
nights
fever
in a row
or
with
something.
fever and just,
so if
can't
he
get
looks a little off, or acts a little off, or sounds a little off,
I finally have an excuse for acting off. That's great.
Nice.
Nice. No,
but
definitely.
I'm glad that we're here and all that. So.
And so please, apologies in advance for the sniffles on the microphone here today. So yeah, we got quite a few things to recap. Had a V8 meeting last night that was excellent, and a lot of data work around that, and new conversations, and we had a member from another group, who wasn't able to make their meeting, in the early part of the month to join in. So that's been an interesting thing. Yeah, same size group, so they are able to kind of float like that. It's been a nice. Option with that, but yeah, otherwise it's been good. A lot of important conversations, a lot of things going on, and so yeah, happy
There's always fun stuff.
For sure,
that you have to report. I mean, because usually when he walks upstairs after the thing, it's like, so how did it go?
Right.
And so yeah, it's always it feels good.
Yeah, absolutely,
to be able to watch people kind of do that, the connections, and looking at the numbers and asking the questions. Because Jim's like, I'll drop a question, boom, and then step back and see, or like, here's the thing. Yeah. What do you have to say? And it's just interesting to watch.
Yeah, last night's conversation were really good. They had we definitely started to touch on some important stuff about decision making with relative to underwriting and income factors, and a lot of things to look at there. So yeah, it was interesting. But why don't we get to
I think that we should
our subject of the day, which
I think that
I can kind of recap that we have. We had the opportunity to go to the podcast stage on Tuesday evening when they opened the expo hall.
Yeah, we were there the whole time.
And we were able to interview 4 different folks. And so today I brought the interview with Chris Macheca, who is the COO at Passtime, been with them 26 years. We'll get to the video and let him explain kind of the story. But we also interviewed Tim Lawrence. And I say interview, these were just really nice casual conversations. We know the people. So we had Tim Lawrence from LHPH, we had Taylor Bird from Dealer Re, and then we had Gordy Tormolen come over. I'm
looking forward to. I enjoyed all of them. There's some of the things we talked about with Gordy that I'm looking forward to sharing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So.
But this conversation, I just had them teed up in the order that we recorded them, and so we did the edits, and so this we're gonna do the Macheca one first, and we'll probably just, since we interviewed each of our founding sponsors for White Hat Way, we'll probably bring them to the next few White Hat Wednesday conversations, and so today with Chris Macheca, got a video teed up to be able to play our time with him. Shall I start it, or you got it over there?
Yeah, let me add that to the stage.
Well, hello again. We are sitting here on the podcast stage
at NIADA's 2024 Expo right now with one of our founding sponsors.
With Chris Macheca from Passtime. So folks who don't know Mr. Macheca, Passtime is a company that's been 30 plus years. We just stopped and snapped a photo at the booth over there of your timeline and your 30.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful stuff. And so we're happy to have you here to share a little bit about, especially your relationship with NIADA as a 30-year company, especially somebody who's heavily served the buy here, pay here space as we do. Just talk a little bit about your company's history and how you guys came to intersect, especially with NIADA.
Sure. Yeah. No. So I've been with Passtime for 26 years now. The company's been around for 30, primarily focused in automotive. So you can imagine.
Which the audio on this is a little bit low. But yeah, he just mentioned that he's been with the company for 26 years, and Pastime's been around for 30.
Right.
So Chris actually joined them in its infancy, I guess you would say, as at when it was. So he's seen an awful lot, as being in the industry. He's been around for quite a while. I mean, it's been over 2 decades. He's been around almost about as long as you have.
Yeah. Well, he's been about the same, right? And when I first got to know GPS, I got to know Chris and the folks at Passtime, and so we've obviously known them a long time. And I think as we go through this, as you mentioned, the other thing that in the video is we didn't explain that there's also a speaker there, so that the people who are passing by in the conference hall can also hear the conversation that's going on, and so you pick up a little bit of that. So apologies for the audio quality there, but it's an important conversation. We hope you can hear Chris well enough. And I was going to try to share, Michelle. I don't see a good way to get it. Let me see if I can get it on the screen. I'm going to show the that image that we have.
Oh, right here. So that's the image right there.
So we snapped that photo of their timeline, but then I've also got, let me get it shared. I've got an image that I can show that is can kind of zoom in on. I'll quickly walk folks through the timeline of Passtime. So can you share? Yes, please. And so that this is kind of zoomed in on their timeline. So I think it's so what you've got is kind of the background on them. They launched with something called Trilock in 1993, and then payment assurance technology came around in 98. And then Passtech became Passtime. So some of us have been around long enough to remember that name of Passtech. And then they became Passtime in 2000. Then in 2002, they launched their first GPS device, Passtracks. So those prior devices worked in the car. They were mounted in the car and had certain technology, to be able to, disable if a payment was made, et cetera. But then in 2007, they unveiled the Elite product, which many of us know. I mean, those dealers that are out there using Passtime are quite familiar with that. It combines GPS and collection technology. Okay, so now you've got the ability to
that's basically starter interrupt and
and so so I think that the significant element of this is you can see that when you're talking to Passtime, you're talking about really the innovators, right? These were the people who were the original innovators, certainly in our country and in our industry, and they've been known to the buy here, pay here space, since back then. And they then at 2013 they started their shift from 2G to 3G, which we've seen that be a big thing.
Those of you who've experienced that know that, like when they shifted into 4G and a lot
people
of
found out the devices that they were paying for weren't working anymore as the network changed. And so this is something
that's what happens when you back on cellular technology, but that's really the only way to do an effective GPS.
Yeah, and I think we can pause here and say, when we talk about and in this case we're talking about Passtime and GPS technology, I think this is part of the reason that we say that it's important to know who you're doing business with. A lot of times what we see, and I wrote an article, it's on LinkedIn from years ago, about this information making decisions about providers, like who do you go with as a provider. And I think what we want to say, and now we say that it's important to understand that Passtime as a company is a founding sponsor for White Hat Way. So we share that, we add that as a kind of a thing for people to know, sort of a disclaimer. and I think we want people to also understand the reason that you want to know the people behind the product, know the history of the company, is that it's in those kind of situations where innovation is changing, technology is changing, who are the people that you're with, and what's their reputation for standing behind, what they have. And so I think it's the people element here that is so significant, and knowing kind of the history when you're starting to do business with folks like this. It's just, you've got quality people. I think as you listen to Chris speak, and as we roll the video some more, you'll be able to hear that you're talking about somebody who is very authentic, and genuine in their desire to support this industry. And obviously they have their own, I'm not having as much luck rolling this as I hope. So,
all right. Do you want me to put that back on?
yeah,
Okay.
I just want to show just a couple more elements of this. So they,
in our success and our growth.
This one.
Oh,
Okay. I apologize.
yeah, no,
Go
it's
ahead.
fine. I wouldn't look on what you were pointing at. So then the part that we fast forward to 2019 is when they introduced the wireless Encore. So we're 5 years into that technology. And then, they continue to expand, obviously, new industries, and and we talk about in the video that they also, are in other industries besides automotive, of course. But if we roll the video again, you'll hear Chris talk about their kind of involvement. And I think what I want you to listen for is their genuine desire to support dealers in this industry.
Yeah.
Right.
And we've been a huge supporter since the beginning, both with NIADA and NADA, understanding the importance of having one voice and one association that we could get behind that's going to be here and be an advocate for the dealers and for the vendors, and ensure that the industry is protected from all sides.
One of the things I needed to just actually pause that. One of the things he just said is that they've been, and I've watched this. I've been observant of how Passtime is actively involved in trying to help the association.
Absolutely.
And it's like he has been they've been huge supporters of the association always.
Right.
And
that's not just financial.
And that's not just financial. Yeah. And that they are someone that are consistently at the policy conferences and all of that. And it's interesting because, as a founding sponsor, we will have conversations with Chris every once in a while. And it's just interesting how much he is respected by the leadership of NIADA too. Just,
absolutely.
Cause he's
and beyond, cause he's a solid guy, right?
Yeah.
As you can tell, as you listen to him, you can just tell.
You talk about the word support. So what I hear is obviously people would come in with a financial interest of, having a chance to build business. And of course you have the opportunity to do that as a result of being a sponsor. But what I hear is you have a genuine desire to support the association, create education, and you recognize the value that NIADA brings as an association.
Absolutely. Right. As an association, helping the dealers grow and be educated about how to grow and be wise about running the business. I mean, you saw in the sessions today just how much great content there was for the dealers to learn and better themselves and better their businesses and their communities.
Right.
And we're a big believer in that.
Yeah, and we see that. I mean, obviously, it's part of what, as Michelle said, you're one of the founding sponsors with that way. And so we know that part of the reason you guys stepped in is because of the education element, the ethics element, kind of that we talked a lot about playing the long game that is buy here, pay here. And that's obviously a lot about customer success and making sure that not only the dealer is successful, but the customer has a chance to be successful in the arrangement as well. And we just know that's something we see with you guys. That's a big thing for you.
Yeah, one of the things that's always bothered me is that image of the car dealer, right?
Yeah.
It's not always been a positive one. And any way that we can continue to support NADA and White Hat Way in particular, raise that image and help people understand that there are great people in this business and people that are helping the community and the people in it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we, obviously we're working to create a community that will help advance that mission and that message, because it's just a matter of publicity and unification around those things. For us, White Hat Way was just a way to put a name on the thing that we all talk about, which is, that principled way to do business, right? And we just we continue to work to try to find ways to attract people to that message, right? And so it's part of what, obviously, when you're in a room full of used car dealers, which, by the way, is really electric
Amazing.
atmosphere here. right?
Amazing.
Yeah, it's great to see
Yeah.
the place full. Obviously, NIADA has been through some trials in recent years. You know, they've had a lot of changes and
Some
now,
great changes.
some really positive changes now.
positive
A
changes.
huge believer in Jeff Martin and what
Oh,
he's
yeah.
building.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
done a great job, and really excited to see what he's got to come.
Kudos to Yes. Jeff.
Sure.
He's only been here for just a little over a year,
Right.
and then Teresa joined him from TIADA.
Right.
Looking forward to seeing what that dynamic duo will shake up, make happen, all
Yeah.
of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we all have a ton of confidence in what they will do, and
Yeah.
obviously we're all going to lean in and support, you know, their initiatives. And yeah, I think you talked about kind of one voice that is NIADA. We think there's obviously a lot of benefit to having people have the go-to source. They know where to find
Yeah.
Mhm.
the information, and obviously one of the big things that the association does is around compliance, which I know is also a big thing for
Big.
Passtime, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, compliance is so important for these dealers with everything that's out there with the FTC, the CFPB, the different state regulations, anywhere they can go and have that voice, that individual or that association that can help guide them through
Mhm.
those pitfalls.
Yeah.
Right. There's a
Yeah.
lot out there to learn. And so having a strong NIADA is really important.
Yeah.
It is, and they do such a great job. And we every once in a while the hashtag Join Your State Association,
Yep.
JYSA. We're going to be doing a lot of media pushing about that.
Great.
But your state associations, your national associations, are the only ones that really have a substantial voice for all of the dealers, with the people that make the decisions and make the rules and make the
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it was evident this past year. We worked really closely, actually, with one of our other competitors, Iran, in the state of Illinois, and the state association and NIADA to help defeat some legislation that would have severely hampered the use of starter interrupt and GPS in Illinois, and really put the dealers in a bad place. And so we were able to come in and educate through the association, the legislators and the individuals that were backing this legislation, and help them understand that this is not a good idea.
Yeah.
So we obviously are happy to be a participant in that, but really we couldn't do it without NIADA and without.
So something there that I really, 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 really appreciate. You know, we've talked about that I frequently get on my little soapbox. It's like, join your state association, your state associations, your national associations. They are the voice and the big, big things. I love that Passtime, as well as Iteron, which is another another player in the GPS starter interrupt space, that through their friendship with NIAD, were able to speak in behalf of the technology and the whys. I mean, because that's kind of what I'm seeing from that, is that they, through the association, that the NIAD, our organization, was able to get these two vendors in front of decision makers,
Right.
in front of those that are driving some of these rules and the compliance pieces.
Sure.
And that, you know, how fantastic is that you know, if they had gone just individually alone to the CFPB or the other organizations, that they probably would not have gotten any opportunity to speak to them. But because we have such a solid, good voice on Capitol Hill, that they were able to pull them in to be able to explain and paint a story and help them understand the benefits, the positives, the things that that technology actually helps. And so, I mean, for me, the big part of my takeaway from this part of the conversation is Chris and others are out there fighting the fight as well.
Sure.
And it's not just about their livelihood and their technology, but it's about because both of them have this kind of technology in their systems of the starter interrupt and all of that how it actually helps. It helps the dealer and it helps the consumer as well, to like the remember, all of that.
Yeah, and this kind of fits in the more than category, because what you hear in that is these companies, you know, Passtime in particular here is doing more than just writing checks to the association.
Yes.
They're actively engaged
Mhm.
in supporting the efforts, and that extends to the efforts on behalf of car dealers, even who are
Mhm.
not their
Mhm.
customers, right?
Mhm.
So I just think this is part of what it's important
Yeah.
to recognize. That's something to consider when you're looking at who you're going to do business with, and you're looking at quotes from different providers. It's important to think beyond just the price tag of the thing.
Uh-huh.
And it's not that Passtime is not competitive on pricing. Of course they are, but the question really is, what are we to consider as we make
Yeah.
a decision about where we do business? And so we
Yeah.
just think this is a really important thing for dealers to consider when they're
Yeah.
making their decision
Well,
about where to
and
business.
and when you're talking about something that will benefit the industry, I just really love how it's not about competition at
Right.
all. And so, in as much as I know that there are a lot of GPS providers out there. I
Mhm.
mean, there's new ones that start up all the time. There's a long list of GPS providers that just like the national organization is the voice for all dealers, that both Passtime and Iteron have had the opportunity to be able to be the voice of all GPS providers. I really love that both of them were there, because it's not about this is just going to help my company. It's about this is going to help the industry.
Right.
This is going to help this segment of the industry as well. And so it was I just really like the idea that there was a voice, that multiple
Well, of course.
players that were able to come and to speak on
And
that.
the fact that those two were invited says a lot, right? It's just like,
Yeah, very actively involved in
yeah.
all of the things.
and well established.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
About the individual state associations.
Absolutely.
So talk to me about, first of all, Passtime let's talk about a product line a little bit, just a high level on what you guys do. For anybody who's listening who's not familiar with the company, talk to me just about, I first knew of your company 20 plus years ago as a dealer myself. And at that time you were offering what I've called an auto disable starter interrupt device that would automatically disable based on a schedule.
Yep.
And you still have that technology.
We still do, yeah.
Yeah.
It's obviously become a little bit more efficient than it was back then
course.
with the advent of cellular and GPS, but that ability to essentially automatically remind a consumer when their payment is due,
Right.
and then prevent the vehicle from operating if it is excessively delinquent.
Sure.
For me, that is great for the consumer, and I think a lot of consumers and advocates have come to understand that situation is far better than a repossession.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? You don't
Yeah.
incur all the fees. You don't incur the hit on the credit, the repossession, right? This is something that helps educate the consumer that this payment is a priority.
Yeah.
So we still do a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
But we see more today. We have a wireless GPS,
Right.
a battery-powered device that can be easily installed in a vehicle and just track that asset in the event that loan does go down, right?
Yeah.
So it's about mitigating risk and recovering that asset more easily. So
Sure.
we have a whole gamut of products, from that basic starter interrupt solution to GPS tracking to the most popular now, which is our wireless battery-powered device.
Yeah, I can
You
see.
know, it's interesting with that whole starter interrupt. Payoneer Me did a lot of survey studies recently, and one of the big reasons why people are late is they forget.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's really is, just like you said, it's better than a repo, but
Sure.
it's just can be a reminder. And it's like, oh darn, it's time. I got to get this taken care of. And it's a great way to
People have other priorities,
Yep.
right? It happens.
Yeah.
And what we really found it did is it raised the priority of that car payment, right?
Yeah.
So your cable bill, your phone bill, your house payment, and then your car payment, and it kept it there, right? So it kept it as a high priority. And
I find it interesting. Your cable bill, your phone bill, your
Cable bill's up there. Yeah.
your rent, and then
Yeah.
your car payment.
Yeah.
Which is I wonder where he came up with, that it's that kind of a stack.
Yeah.
But for those of you who have not had the opportunity, I think that they probably have an awful lot of this survey, that the big one that was done
Mhm.
about a year and a half ago from Passtime, not Passtime, but
Payoneer
from
Me.
Payoneer Me. And it was about, why people pay late.
Right.
And this is just a beautiful kind of a conjunction, a marriage of they forget. And so that starter interrupt has the ability to remind. And, just understand too, for those of you that don't use this technology. We've had a lot of dealers that it depends on what they
Right.
want to be able to do, but you get to program, and as far as I understand from the ones that I'm familiar with, because he said, if you get really delinquent, then it shuts off. And so you get to choose what really delinquent is.
Right. And he used the word, excessively delinquent.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting.
And-
The dealer
Mhm.
chooses.
And so sometimes that might be 3 days and sometimes that might be a week.
Yeah.
Or, whatever,
Let
but
me-
you get to choose.
Let me explain real quick too that we may drop the video because the device that I'm hosting the video on is
Do you want me to go get a
about
thing?
it's about out of power, but we can just put the full video. We're about 2/3 of the way through the video
Okay.
now, and we can play it. I'm just saying if it drops, we'll just make the video it's about 11-minute video. We can
Yeah.
put it with the
Well,
broadcast.
let's get it back on while
Sure.
we have
Go
them.
ahead.
live up to their obligations.
Yeah.
Right. And changes the dynamic too with the dealer and the lender, in that the dealer and the lender isn't chasing that individual,
Mhm.
right? The device is forcing that communication. So
Yeah.
you can have that difficult discussion around, hey, your payment is due. Can you make that payment? If you can't, we just need to deal with it now before it gets too late.
And they're calling in instead of you
Yes.
having to call
Yeah,
out.
yes.
to
And let's
take
address
care
it
of
now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
no,
That
for
makes-
sure. We recognize that, and I want to confirm in our travels. We work with a lot of dealers and hear from them, and I can say too, and even across social media, we see that the wireless device is proving to be quite popular. It makes sense. It's a pretty
Very
small
much.
device,
Mhm.
and so we're seeing dealers use that as a backup
Mhm.
to the
Even
primary.
next to one
we
that's actually
see-
wired.
We see people installing two now more
Mhm.
frequently. It's just very simple and easy to use. right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
inexpensive by comparison, because there is no installation cost or anything
Sure.
like that.
Right on.
And of course, we're here to talk about automotive, but I know Pastime's also branched into lots of other industries. You're finding that there's collateral protection or
Which is automotive, but not
Well,
cells.
we track
Yeah.
we track about anything that moves now, right? From porta potties to,
To my dog.
dinosaur bones, dog. Yeah, you name it, we're tracking it today.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that
That's
is
amazing.
incredible. So we're excited to, obviously we're grateful for your sponsorship, and we're
Yeah.
excited to work with you in whatever ways that we can continue to bring education to dealers and eventually consumers, so that we can help. Because I know that even as a company where you guys make your living, you don't want to see the account end up in repossession.
No.
So sometimes we all obviously hope that equipment that is part of what you guys offer is that it's able to help to a successful conclusion for the dealer
Correct.
and the consumer. So we know that about your company.
Yes.
It's an important thing for folks to understand is that you never wish for the repo.
Never, never. That's the last thing anybody
not
wants
the
in this
outcome.
whole situation.
right. For
Well,
sure.
as you know, we as a founding sponsor, we've gotten to know you, and so I understand how I see what you are doing with Passtime. It's about helping customers to be able to fulfill their obligation of their contract,
Well,
and how can we do it in a way that it's a help for both, but it's to help
one
the
of the
customer.
things when we first started, our founder Stan Schwarz, back in the 1980s, he had terrible credit.
Mhm.
He knew what it was like to be in that situation where he couldn't get a car financed. So one of the foundations and the principles that he built the company on was being respectful to the consumer and
Yeah.
understanding, hey, they're in this situation for a reason. How can we help them get
Yeah.
out of it? Right?
Sure. Very
Yeah.
good.
I just real quick, I love that.
Yeah.
I really do.
Sure.
Not the fact that he used to have poor credit,
Yeah.
but so the founder back in the 80s had a period of time where they were unable to get financing because of really poor credit. And so when they created this, the one of the core principles was to be to not diminish the customer in
Mhm.
the process. And so that I really love that. That is without it being on the appendix W, but it might be in threads in a lot of different ones, is that this, the white hat way is not about the white hat way is about dealers, but ultimately it's about consumers.
Yeah.
And it's about how do we help consumers be successful.
Yeah, and before that, what lens do we use in viewing the consumer? Because that's going to affect how we approach. It
Mhm.
might affect how we train. There's a lot of things there. So, the word compassion comes to mind, which we don't talk
Oh,
about enough. But what you
yeah.
hear there, he referred to, and it's kind of hard to hear in the audio. I noticed even in the text translation that it thought he referred to Stan Schwartz, who passed away, I think he said
Mhm.
6 or 7 years ago. And so Stan was one of the co-founders, and that was a driver. And I remember Stan. I met him on a few occasions. Just really a prince of a guy. And it just, hmm,
Yeah.
yeah, it just tells you a lot about the company.
Well, and I would say that Stan never referred to the customers as these people,
Right.
ever.
Sure.
And that's been something that when we hear dealers or vendors talk about
Yeah.
the segment as these people,
Right.
um, it kind of changes it. For some
Yeah.
reason, the what I get is it's a diminishing thing. These people, it's a
Yeah.
diminishing thing.
That's what I hear.
And so it'd be interesting to talk to Chris and find out what kind of phrases and
Yeah.
whatever that Stan used for
Sure.
for the customer,
Yeah.
for the dealer's customer,
Yeah.
for the segment that he had once been a participant of.
Well, regardless, what it tells you is that this is the approach they bring is, let's show
Mhm.
some respect, let's show some compassion for the consumer. And you heard him say, repossession is never the outcome that you're looking for. And I
No.
think that's one of the tricky things. And it's one of the things that I look forward to working through with Chris and the others as we move forward is like, what you heard basically, Chris acknowledges that in the best case scenario, the GPS device would be practically invisible.
Mhm.
It would be almost unknown and never needed because the GPS is really tracking the collateral, which makes it about the car.
Mhm.
And we want to certainly do everything we can to make it about the
Yeah.
customer and a successful business relationship and never have to locate the car and recover the collateral. Obviously, it happens, but we just know really this is about the approach and the attitude, and what you're hearing here is the
Yeah.
attitude that they bring and kind of the backstory behind their own founding.
Let's see if we can get the rest of this before you
Sure.
go.
Yeah,
before
go
you
ahead.
die. Wonderful.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you making
thanks
time.
for
Thank
stopping
you
by.
guys.
Oh.
I can't say
It's
thank
like
you
a
enough
bus.
for all that you guys continue to do for
Oh,
the industry. And
you're welcome.
White Hat Way is just getting going, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to see where it goes from here.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
We always say
All
we-
right. All right. There's something part of this I wanted to see if I can that I wanted people to be aware of, and this is something that I was pretty it was interesting to have a conversation with Chris about this. And let me see if I can get this up. We're going to add this to the stage. So back in, when was this? March of this last year, a company called BlitzPay and Passtime partnered to they partnered for payments to make it easier for customers to be able to make their payments and get their car turned back on. Because one of the hurdles that governmental entities, it's they want to be able to remove all barriers for customers to be able to pay.
Right.
For customers to be able to fulfill that, and that when dealers make it difficult, when dealers are making it so that it's harder to pay if they're late, or it's just that they have to jump through hoops, that's something that kind of pulls up red flags.
Yeah, and maybe we don't just say dealers, but creditors.
Creditors,
right?
Yes. And so what this part of what, from what I understand, this strategic partnership is about, is when a DMS goes down,
Mhm.
It is harder for a customer to make a payment and have their car turned back on.
Right.
And so this mitigates that scenario.
Yeah, and I want to talk
Mhm.
about there's the actual technology here, right? So
Mhm.
this is why they're moving. So DMSs don't really go down, as far as actual total failure very
Yeah.
often. It happens.
Well,
right?
I
We
mean,
saw in
we've
the
heard a
news,
couple
yeah, there have been
recently
some
where it's
failures
like, I
lately.
can't do the thing and I
Yeah.
can't do the
So it
stuff.
happens. So
Mhm.
more likely what you're talking about can be a glitch scenario. So the part I want to talk about is, what we understood about this situation, and this really came, from one of the other providers, is like because of what you said, if the customer is in a difficult place, and sometimes that might be affecting their ability to enable their car, like some of this technology has start or interrupt, right?
Mhm.
Or that the dealer creditor may be taking action against them because they don't show that the payment has been made.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so what's happening here is they're creating a connection directly between the payment processor and the GPS device. So the reason I think this is important is sometimes I get the idea in this context when we talk about compliance and the long arm of the law that is the CFPB and this new regulatory agency. I think let's ask ourselves for a moment, what are they doing? In this exact context, what the CFPB or FTC would be doing, and the reason they found it necessary to take this action, is because they're really out there acting to protect consumers, right?
Yeah.
They're acting to make sure that consumers are not being mistreated. And so I hear that and I think, why would we have any problem with a regulatory agency taking steps to protect consumers? We all, I hope, are doing the same thing. I hope nobody hearing our voice would be out there trying to mistreat and take advantage of consumers.
Mhm.
So I think, what I'm hearing here is, it's an opportunity and is an example of why we cooperate with them and demonstrate that
Yes.
nobody over
Yeah.
here is really trying. It may
Yeah.
have that appearance on
Mhm.
occasion, but most dealers and certainly these vendors and providers that we're working with, there's no calculated effort to mistreat or take advantage of consumers. And I think it also can maybe affect our approach and our attitude toward the CFPB. Some people act like, well, they're overreaching, they're making
Mhm.
my life difficult, and I'm thinking they're charged with making sure that we as creditors in the buy here pay here space and other industries as well are not mistreating consumers. And so on a
Mhm.
White Hat Wednesday, it's important for us to say, guess what?
Yeah.
We're also on the side of not mistreating
Oh
consumers.
yeah. And so I mean for me when I look at this and try to put it in a different visual and correct me if I'm wrong. I can be a mama bear.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, do not come after my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I will eat you.
Oh no. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm protective of
Mm-hmm.
my children, and so sometimes in the past when my kids have been little, is my first reaction is just like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a conversation and you can adjust and everyone involved can come to a good what works for everyone kind of conclusion. And so I kind of look at this the CFPB as the mama bear over the consumer, which is like their kid. It's like this, we are our purpose is to protect
Mm-hmm. Sure.
the customer,
Right.
which and so it's understandable
Mhm.
that when a red flag comes up, that it's like, okay, we're going to do all of this. And then it comes time for those that are part of what is going to be shifting and changing to come forward and say, okay, this is why this is the way that it is. And this is, giving the example and painting a clearer picture so that they can come to a win-win
Sure.
scenario. And I know that the NIADA has been Passtime is this whole conversation around starter interrupts and GPS is just one of the things that NIADA, because they do have a voice on Capitol Hill, are able to bring the people in to
Mhm.
have the conversation about the why, so that we can, with Mama Bear, it's like, yes, I'm still going to protect, but I do recognize that there are things that are necessary in order because it is maybe things that I'm thinking are not a protection are a protection,
Sure.
or all of that. So as he was going through that last little bit, I was like, or we were talking about the blitz pay and all of that, is the CFPB is like a parent that is just like a mama bear. It's like,
Okay.
we're going to make sure that our kids are protected, that
Okay.
that the consumer, especially in this instance, the subprime consumer,
Sure.
is protected.
And I think the tone of voice that we would bring, if I'm a dealer speaking on behalf of a dealer, the tone of voice that I would bring to a conversation in response to, some sort of an inquiry or
Mhm.
whatever is like, I think you want to be able to demonstrate. We've talked about this some in the past. It's like, I think what we want to be able to demonstrate, if let's just say I'm a dealer and I'm being investigated, or
Mhm.
something, then I want to be able to demonstrate that whatever it is that has raised this question,
Mhm.
I want you to quickly see that this is not, we're not over here mistreating consumers
Mhm.
intentionally. Do
Mhm.
we make a mistake here and there? I'm sure we could find out that's true, but there's a pattern to show that and there's a culture, right? All these
Mhm.
things would support the fact that as a company, we're not over here trying to, take advantage of anybody.
Yeah.
And so when that, I think, would be the tone that we would bring to any dialogue with the
Mhm.
CFPB. Whereas if we come up and say, you guys are overreaching, you don't belong in here, and
Yeah.
so that just, put up a wall, and now you really create a,
Yeah.
sort of and I'm not saying that's happened with dealers, certainly not with people that we know, but because the CFPB is fairly new, and they've traditionally up to now have only really sanctioned the some of the larger creditor dealers out there in the space. Obviously they have the authority to do what they need to do to protect consumers, but I think
Mhm.
that's a bit of a tangent, from
Mhm.
the conversation with Mr. Macheca. But it's like the space that they live in. They're sitting there as a technology provider between creditor and debtor,
Mhm.
and so now it's like it kind of accelerates the conversation in
Yeah.
some areas.
Well, and going back to that whole thing of like the mother, children, that kind of thing. I'm kind of getting that the CFPB is moving forward in this kind of way, is that someone comes to tattle, you get that one side of information.
Hmm.
And so it's, as you start to gather, then it's usually somewhere in the middle. And
Yeah,
or it's like, hey, you were upset about this, but that's about being responsible and having
sure.
consequences, and or whatever. But I just, the long and the short of this whole conversation is, I'm really, really grateful for businesses like Passtime
Hmm.
and Chris specifically
Sure.
for being out there and leading the conversation
Hmm.
around what's good for the dealer and what's good for the consumer, and having a genuine desire to help consumers.
Sure. No, for sure. And I think what you also understand around that is,
The
and you
customer,
heard him
yeah.
say, in Pastime supporting White Hat Way, part of the motivation with them is they want to add to any opportunity
Hmm.
to shine the light on dealers who are doing business the right way. There are plenty
Yeah.
of good guys and good gals out there. And so
Hmm.
that's part of what White Hat Way will continue to do. And so, again, we're grateful for their sponsorship. And we think, as you hear the conversations with, you'll hear Taylor Bird and Tim Lawrence, Taylor with Dealer Re and Tim Lawrence with LHPH
Uh-huh.
Capital, they bring a similar, attitude about those things. And so look forward to those videos to be shared. And again, I'll put the entire video from the conversation with Chris Macheca on the
Yeah.
threads with our podcast from this morning.
So White Hat Way, today's White Hat Wednesday. White Hat Way, one of our whys is to be able to bring together the voices of dealers that are really do have that best interest at heart, who
Mhm.
really are trying to help their consumers, help the customer succeed.
Right.
And so it's about creating a voice
Right.
that can help lead others and become something that is heard
Sure.
across the industry or whatever, for good,
Yeah.
for, let's really rally behind core principles that are about helping
Yeah.
the success of our customers.
And we're now probably 100 episodes or more of White Hat Wednesday. So we
Mhm.
appreciate folks, lending
Absolutely.
their ears to the conversation in the days and weeks and months to come. We're going to be asking you to lend your voice,
Uh-huh.
to that as well. So we definitely look forward to, having folks continue to join us in this
Yeah.
conversation.
So all of you out there in listener land, thank you so much for joining us. I'd want to say JYSA.
Mm-hmm.
JYSA, join your state association. Feel free to hashtag the heck out of JYSA.
Mm-hmm. And
if
the
you
hashtag White Hat Way.
and the hashtag White Hat Way. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you guys all have a great Wednesday, and we will see you on Friday with another morning show
Very good.
episode. All right, have a great day.